Conor McGregor has lost his appeal against the finding of a civil jury that he raped Nikita Hand. Here is Nikita Hand speaking outside court.
I want to begin by thanking my legal team, the Rape Crisis Centre and the 3 judges who delivered the decision today. I'm also deeply grateful for everyone who supported me, those who believed in me and stood by my side throughout this long and painful journey. This appeal has re-traumatised me over and over again. Being forced to relive it, what happened has had a huge impact on me. To every survivor out there, I know how hard it is, but please don't be silent. You deserve to be heard. You also deserve justice. Today I can finally move on and try to heal. Thank you.
Frank Rainey, our courts correspondent, with me now. Frank, what can you tell us?
Well, I think you summed it up nicely there, in the sense that Conor McGregor has comprehensively lost his appeal. We're all very familiar with what happened before a jury at the High Court at the end of last year, when Nikita Hand successfully sued the former UFC fighter. And it all related to her claim that he had brutally assaulted and raped her in the penthouse suite of the Beacon Hotel back in 2018. Now, no sooner had the jury came back with its verdict last November, Conor McGregor took to social media to announce his intention to appeal. That appeal was heard a number of weeks ago. There were a number of grounds of appeal brought. One that wasn't brought was his side's application to introduce new evidence. This related to former neighbours of Nikita Hand. In the end, they abandoned that application. But the 3-judge panel did hear a number of other grounds of appeal, including the wording of the issue paper that went to the jury before they began their deliberations. And that essentially poses the question for the jury to ask. And McGregor's team argue that the judge made an error by framing the central issue to the jury as to whether he assaulted Nikita Hand rather than specifically sexually assaulting her. They claimed that the wording risked confusing the jurors about the seriousness of the allegations. Now, the other side said there was no way that the jury would have been confused because of the instructions that the judge gave them before they were sent away with that issue paper, and the High Court has agreed with them. They emphasised that the judge's charge was brutally clear, made perfectly obvious to jurors that the central allegation was one of rape. There was also an issue brought in relation to the admission of no comment responses from Conor McGregor's interviews with Gardaí. This is at a time when he was being questioned on suspicion of rape. Criminal charges were not brought in the end against Conor McGregor. It was a civil trial that happened before the High Court last year. But during his Garda interviews, Conor McGregor, we heard, responded no comment over 100 times to the questions that were put to him. And his barristers contended that these responses should not have been admissible. They shouldn't have gone to the jury because they claimed that they prejudiced or had the potential to prejudice the jurors by inviting adverse inference. I suppose the concern there is that if somebody being questioned about a serious complaint like this refuses or answers no comments, that there is a suspicion of guilt, that there may be hiding something. And that's the reason that certainly in criminal trials, no comment answers are very rarely put to jurors. But the Court of Appeal held that the trial judge gave unimpeachable exposition regarding these responses. Jurors were repeatedly told that the no comment answers carried no evidential value. They were instructed specifically not to draw negatives from them. The court saw no deprivation of McGregor's rights of unfair prejudice and no evidence of a real risk of unfair trial. I could go on. There were other grounds of appeal brought, but at the end of the day, Conor McGregor lost all of them. He wasn't in court himself today, but as we've heard, Nikita Hand was.
Oh, any word from Conor McGregor's legal representatives outside court in terms of what he does from here? Can he do anything from here from a legal point of view?
From a legal point of view, at this point, the only avenue he has is a potential appeal to the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land. But there isn't an automatic right of bring an appeal before the Supreme Court. He'd have to prove there's a very high threshold, and he would have to prove that there has been a great injustice here, and that there is, I suppose, a need in the greater public interest to have that appeal heard. So it's no mean feat to get a case heard before the Supreme Court. As to whether or not he attempts to go down that route remains to be seen. His lawyer certainly didn't make any comment as they left the courtroom today. Conor McGregor, as I say, wasn't there, but Nikita Hand was seated at the back directly in front of me. She was surrounded by family and friends. You could tell it was a nail-biting experience for her, because the judgment wasn't just handed out. The result wasn't just declared in an instant. It took over an hour for the court to go through in some detail their reasoning behind the dismissal. And they took each ground of appeal in turn, outlined the arguments put forward and their reasoning behind their decision. So it was almost like, and I hate making this crude pun, but it was almost like watching a boxing match, where after each round, a fighter is given points, and there's a winner of each round according to the judges, but you don't find out until the end who has won. And that must have been a very suspenseful and difficult experience for Nikita. And in fact, when it emerged that Conor McGregor had lost his appeal, it took a moment to dawn on her, and she was absolutely delighted. As you can tell, she came out, lots of media there again today, and she came out and she bravely stood in front of all those microphones and those cameras. And while she welcomed today's outcome, she was also mindful to reach out to survivors in the same way that she did when she spoke outside the High Court last November, to say that, they're not alone, and that you can find the strength to come forward, and that you will be listened to, and that you will get your justice just like she has.
And I understand as well the court made a ruling with regard to costs and James Lawrence. So this was Conor McGregor's friend who gave evidence in the original trial.
Yeah, that's right. And I suppose he's often forgotten about amidst all of this. So she made a claim of rape against Mr. Lawrence as well. Now, the jury didn't find any wrongdoing and didn't rule against him in relation to that. They weren't with Nikita Hand in relation to the case that she made out against him. So his appeal focused on the fact that he wasn't awarded costs against Nikita Hand. And in the ordinary way, as you well know, Kieran, when it comes to these types of cases before the High Court, the loser pays. That is the general rule. Nikita Hand, having not successfully argued her case against James Lawrence, in the ordinary way, costs follow the event. But the High Court judge actually departed from that because he felt there were a number of reasons that he gave, and clearly they were objected to by Mr. Lawrence. But the main one was that he wasn't actually at a loss because Conor McGregor had picked up his legal bill. And the judges considered everything today, and they essentially upheld the High Court's decision, reasoning that an award of costs to James Lawrence, which again were paid by Conor McGregor, could indirectly benefit McGregor, who had been found liable, and that they felt would have created a sufficient justification to deny Lawrence's costs and to treat each side as bearing their own expenses. So they weren't with him in relation to that. So both Conor McGregor and James Lawrence both lost their appeals today. And I should say James Lawrence was also not in court today. Both men were represented by their legal teams.